This is Ludonarrative Dissidents, a podcast about tabletop role-playing games, how they're made and how they're played. Over the next hour, 3 experienced game designers, Ross Payton, Greg Stolze, and me, James Wallace, will field strip a game or supplement, discussing how it works, how players use it, and what we can learn from it. Read show notes for each episode on our website, www.ludonarrativedissidents.com, where you can also join our Discord server, and find links to our library of previous episodes. But for the moment, enjoy this episode of Ludonarrative Dissidents.
Hello, and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 3, Episode 18. We're covering Mothership, Gradient Descent. Gradient Descent is a Mothership module slash campaign setting slash megadungeon that was released a while ago. It has been for the 0th edition and for 1st edition, is pre-printed a few times and modified for the current edition of Mothership. And it is, what if Blade Runner was also a giant orbital station that was run by an evil AI? And
what if Blade Runner was a dungeon crawl?
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
It's a fun, well, let's see here. It was written...
Blade Runner in the Dark.
Written by Luke Gearing.
Tomb of Blade Runner.
Originally published in 2020. As a physical product, is a zine, like most of the Mothership products. A 5.5 by 8.5 zine. I quite like this. Of course, I'm a sucker for a good dungeon crawl, a good mega dungeon. You know, most mega dungeons are fantasy in nature, you know, D&D inspired or set. Inspired more by like the Mines of Moria, but this is a sci-fi mega dungeon, and boy, isn't it. As you play the role of divers who are exploring the station, sneaking past or bribing your way past a blockade to get into this remote space station to steal valuable artifacts, while an AI makes infiltrator androids, and your character's greatest problem is, have I been replaced by an android who thinks he's a human? And that is a and you can run this as a one-shot or as a campaign, and there's a lot to talk about. So James, before we get into details, what are your overall first impressions of this?
It's, first, second and third impressions. I played 2 sessions of this, kind of as one-shots. Almost, although it was the same characters, it was 2 separate excursions into the deep. And we had a good time, and it was really kind of psychological horror and what's going on, and we didn't know. And I got the sense that there was this huge structure behind, and, you know, at some point the GM would know exactly what was going on, and that we were actually unfolding a story. And then I got to read it, and no, that is not the way it's structured at all. It's really loose. It's really sparsely described in most ways. I mean, you say it's a mega dungeon. It's 64 pages. It's digest-sized and 64 pages. It's tiny. What it reminded me of was a lot of the Judges Guild early D&D modules from the late 70s, early 80s, stuff like City State of the Invincible Overlord. Not the recent releases, but the original versions, which were like, you know, in this street you will find Jones the Baker, and then there'll be Jones's stats, and maybe if you're very lucky, 1 or possibly 2 lines of description that might give you some interesting, or just Jones's particularly fine at eclairs, and then on to the next place. And it was up to you entirely to flesh it out. The 2 sessions that we did, the first one was going in on deck 1, the top level. It was really slow. It does say quite early on in the book that you should expect to take 10 minutes to get through a room, and a small room, a regular size room, and an hour to get through a large industrial room. And I think it means game time, but that's pretty much how long we were taking, because we were really cautious and investigating everything. There was a hanged corpse, there was graffiti, and we go, who's been here before us? What sinister messages are they leaving? No, the place is packed with graffiti. Everybody's left graffiti. The one thing we weren't doing was searching, because it appears, and in a very old school D&D way, what you're meant to do is search, because that's how you find the artifacts. But this is a mega dungeon. If you search every room, you'll be in there for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I think actually kind of that's the point. And that's what you're meant to do. You're meant to treat it in this kind of megadungeonish or, roguelike way, in that you go in, you explore a bit more, you take what you find back to your safe place, which is the Bell, this rocket thruster turned into a space station with your friend, he's not your friend, Arcady, who will buy your stuff, or buy the stuff that you've found off you, where there is the Ghost Eater, who will give you a recurring quest, and then you go back in. And it really does feel, reading it, like D&D, but that was not, certainly the way we played it in the 2 one-shots, was not the way it was at all. And I think, I'm aware I'm talking too much, this was partly due to my character, because Mothership is, for those who don't know it, it's blue-collar Alien, basically. This is not Alien the role-playing game. We talked about that a few episodes ago. Alien the role-playing game is a brilliant evocation of the Alien movies. If you want to play the Alien movies, buy Alien. If you want to do SF horror from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Mothership is your baby, because it has the scope that the Alien RPG lacks. And it's just that it's toned for it. It's brilliantly constructed, and it has these character archetypes. And I was playing Harry Dean Stanton from Alien as if he wasn't in Alien. He was a very, I'm here to do the job. I'm just going to get on with it. I want to get paid. I want to get home. I want to get laid. I want to get to sleep. That was the guy. Which, in an environment where you're actually meant to be exploring and searching and stuff, he was like, no, we've got a job to do. Let's stop wasting time. Let's get in and do this. And that was perhaps what it didn't quite work. And the second exploration, we went in much lower down, because you can do this, because the lower levels have direct entry points if you can find them. We went in on, I think, level 5. Don't quote me on that. And it was basically, there were completed androids down here, in some of them in storage, some of them kind of waiting for approval that was never going to come, and weird, sinister stuff that fought us, and we came off very badly. It was exciting, but at that point it started feeling a lot less structured. It did feel like we were chiseling away at this massive structure, which is what it is. We had fun, but I think the more we'd have continued, I think I'd have got increasingly frustrated and realised, if what you're looking for is narrative, if you're looking for anything linear, it's not here. This is not a piece of linear storytelling. The storytelling's really on the GM.
Yeah, I don't think it impressed me as much as it impressed you, because I was reading it as an artifact. I imagined that you could run a really good game with this if you're a good GM. I don't know that you could run a really good game of this if you were an average GM. This, I don't know. It just,
Fair.
I'm like, okay, so the androids bleed white stuff. Okay, that's nothing new. Okay, they replace you, they're doppelgangers. Okay, that's nothing new. There is a giant, invincible, evil overmind over. Okay, yeah, no, seen that before. I'm like, where's the pizzazz? I do not want to be a hater. This looks completely functional, well put together, looks like it would work just fine. It does not have an Achilles heel that's waiting to snap and roll up your gastrocnemius muscle like it's a window shade. But I'm like, what's in here that I couldn't have written as a freshman in college? And if you're going to tell the GM to do all the heavy lifting, give them something that isn't already lying around for them to lift, right? Because this is not, as James pointed out, this doesn't have the elaborate structure. It's like, no, the structure is emergent. You know, your character's actions will have big effects. If you kill Monarch, the giant AI, all this stuff happens. And okay, and your GM will write it for you. And if you release the Minotaur, then this is what will happen. And as a GM, you'll write that. And maybe I'm asking too much from a 64-page book. I should keep my my expectations a little more modest for something of this scope and scale. But I don't know. I kept waiting for it to give me the thing that I would go out of my way to hunt up. And I kept getting, let me find the part that drove me not crazy, but it is when there's a part where it's like, oh, what will this creature look like in your game? And I'm like, man,
are you talking about the fallen androids with the random table on how they're or forgotten androids?
It's on page 58. It's the Dweller. And what does the Dweller look like in your game? And I'm like, motherfucker, if I wanted to make up some creepy looking thing, I would not be paying you creepy looking thing making up money. It's like,
well, they do give you some guidelines to go for it. Yeah,
coil and crush tentacles.
And there's some artwork there. So yeah,
it feels like I went into a bar expecting a really great bespoke signature drink, and they're like, okay, so our signature drink, this is gonna knock you out. It's Coca-Cola, well rum, and a lime. And I'm like, I could make a Cuba Libre at home. I have all that at home. Why am I here? I mean, and the answer with some bars is, well, you're here for the ambiance. If this is a bar I go to for the ambiance, I want a more exotic ambiance. Maybe I'm just jaded and my soul has blackened to the point I can't experience joy. But I don't know.
I think the RPG itself, I think the system of Mothership actually provides quite a lot of that ambiance. You know it's going to be horrific. You know there's going to be weird stuff in there. Mothership has a stress mechanic which works really well. Plus, in here, there's the bends mechanic. The longer you are within the deep, the more your character, and that you are exposed to its stuff, the more your character is likely to start believing that they are or have been replaced by an android, or suspecting that they may be, or indeed that some of their fellows may be. And that's really nice, that kind of creeping dread. And that's all front-loaded in this. The first few pages of the adventure explain basically the setting stuff before you actually get into the maps. And from the GM's perspective, I think the presentation as well is impeccable. This looks like a manual from the probably from the 80s. The typesetting is pretty sparse. It's very, very functional. The art is, I don't know how you describe it, impressionistic and horrific at the same time, and very monotone. It's not particularly representational. Even the lack of text, I think, can work in some cases. But you have to remember, for the players are experiencing it through their characters' eyes. So when the GM describes something, even in, just reading out one of these, the sound of grinding works its way into your skull, teeth, fingernails, which just happens to be a line I've got from the page I have open in front of me. They hear that, they feel that. The second expedition we did, there are massive rooms just filled with inert androids of all skin tones. It's like a colour swatch, but it's things that appear to be human in 3 dimensions. And it's like, and are they moving? Well, not at first. But you keep getting the sense that they might be moving, and is that the bends, or is that air currents, and it was great. It was really creepy. It was, in a way that simply the description on the page, or even just for the GM just reading the description to the players, I think the effect the players get, and this is the power of interactive entertainment, the effect the players get is much, much stronger, because as the old Infocom advert from the early 1980s used to run, the most powerful graphics engine in the world is your brain.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a style of game design that I see that is like a more recent invention. I think it's the NSR sort of, New School Revolution, or, OSR style of being very concise and very dense, and also very sparse compared to like trad RPG development. Gradient Descent is a dungeon module that expects the GM, like, to do 80% of the work of establishing a framework of a space dungeon, essentially. In traditional RPG development, the dungeon would have one story: rescue the princess at the bottom of the dungeon, kill the dragon, get the princess, get out. It's only written for that one story. What Gradient Descent does, and what a lot of NSR RPGs do, is to like, well, here's a dungeon, and here's a framework, and here are the different kinds of stories you can tell with this. For example, you could just make it, a one-shot dungeon crawl. You can make a campaign about infiltrator androids. Go find out what the Minotaur is and, go find it. It gives you a lot of options, but it doesn't expect to, by being so open-ended and customizable, like, it doesn't do the last 20% of GMing necessary. And I think this is also a difference between earlier RPGs and this one, because this is the era of the internet and the social media. You're sort of expected to go out onto the, Mothership Discord or the Mothership Reddit or whatever RPG community you're on, and sort of like, well, hey, what should I do for this, or how can I customize this? So I think that it's a different style of scenario / dungeon writing than what we're used to. So I think, but for 64 pages, it's incredibly dense. There's a lot of material each page.
Oh yeah, there's huge amounts of stuff in there.
Like, the map is just like written as kind of like almost like a circuit schematic. Like, it's just a little node, a little flow chart of like, here you go. This color means it's a human scale room. This color means it's an industrial scale room. So there's a lot on each page, and so you have to like decompress it. It's almost like a compressed dungeon. You have to decompress it yourself, in order to bring it to the table for best results. But yeah,
what that says to me, I mean, I've said before that like the secret of tabletop role-playing games is wildness. And that if you'd told me beforehand, yeah, what this does is it's taking everything out of the dungeon crawl that your characters are going to break and throw away anyway, that might have made it more appealing to me. The expectation in, a lot of structured early dungeons, early scenarios, especially back in the era of antagonistic play, right? When it was much more the GM against the players. We have to confine the players. We have to chain them down so they don't freak out and break everything and say, why can't we open a muffin shop in the middle of this dungeon? Clearly the goblins love muffins. This is, if you wanted to do a muffin shop in the deep, it would accept it because it's already so sketchy that adding one more, sketching in 3 more lines, not a big deal. Parts of it were too abstracted and sort of gnomic for my life. Like, let me find the ones that bugged me, because I wrote them down like I do, 44B and 44G. Let me find 44B. Here we go. 44B, desert loop, huge loop of glass and a stream of warm air, filled with pure sand, flowing endlessly, a whisper magnified to a roar. I'm like, is this a poem or is this a description of a room? What is that? And, 44G is engraving needles, scratching as loud as God's fingernails against a galactic chalkboard. A million wafers etched in hyper-precision. Takes 2 hours to traverse. 1 stress, no save. Engraving needles force a body save if 0G trained, or 3d10 damage as the machines continue ignoring the meat. I'm like, I cannot picture from these 3.5 lines what this room looks like, other than it's loud and there's doodads. I would have liked a little more. I mean, it's evocative and it leaves space for the GM and the players to fill in meaning, but I feel there is an optimum level. There's an optimum balance between describing so much that there's no wiggle room and describing so little that you might as well be giving them a blank page and saying, just make up your own dungeon. This has chosen its position way towards the blank page end. And that's a legitimate choice. I feel that at some points it goes a little too far into the vague and abstract. But maybe that is just me being a curmudgeonly old grognard.
It ties into something that I felt as well within the construction of the whole deep, which is there is this process. It's a factory. It builds androids, and you make your way down the various factory levels. And the stuff Greg was just quoting is from floor 3.4, the brain construction zone. It's like, do we really need to work through all the different stages in which the robots the androids are built? Because it doesn't really build to anything particular. There's some interesting encounters along the way, but you're just watching them build up the androids. It felt like, I mean, yes, it's a mega dungeon. Yes, it needs to be a mega dungeon, it needs a bunch of room. But as you say, a lot of it, the content is just, and again, I'm going to go back to what I was saying before. When you hear this as a player, you're thinking, this has a purpose. How does this fit in? This loop of sand endlessly circulating. Oh, it's got to tie to something. And this is kind of my frustration, because then you get to read it as the GM or as, someone with a copy of the adventure, and you go, oh, it's just a loop of sand. This ties into one particular thing, because the crux of it, what makes this really work for me is, or as a player, was the bends. The whole suspicion that at some point I would be replaced by an android and I wouldn't know, and that's brilliant.
I got a comment about the bends too.
And I thought there might be, little clues along the way that, and yes, you roll randomly, there's stuff. But the way you discover if you have been replaced by an android, this is not cued off from any particular encounter or something that happens. It's if somebody uses an android detector on you and you fluff your bends roll. At that point, you've been replaced. The game decides at that point, yes, you have been replaced by an android, and whoever was using the android detector knows it as well. That's the only way you find out that you've been replaced by an android. I fluff a roll, and the narrative crux of the adventure is on that. It's, what happens if everybody fluffs the roll? What happens if nobody fluffs the roll? Then, no, give us some certainty here. There's a moment you enter a room and you roll a die, and somewhere between 1 and 99 broken androids are present and I think run towards you. It's like, give us a number! 1 to 99. If it's 1, that's completely underwhelming. If it's 99, that is a very, very different encounter indeed. There was a lack of certainty.
Yeah.
Here, there was like, oh no, we must let the GM make up their own mind. Sometimes as the game designer, you need to say, this is what happens now, for effect. And yes, I'm a narrativist, and yes, I'm not about necessarily linear storytelling, but there are times when it's nice to have a bit of linearity.
I mean, sometimes you are going to slip on the staircase and you want that handrail to be there.
Because of that, the way it's written, it's for these individual preferences of a GM. It'd be so easy to modify the bends rules to accommodate what you think they should be, make it like, it's drawing straws. Someone's going to be the android. We're going to make roll, you can customize the mechanics to guarantee that at least
build
one
a
person.
Bag with one black marble.
Build a bag. Ooh, see, there you go. And I'm sure people in the Mothership Discord will pick that up and start using that. There we go. There is this running prepared material versus running improvised material or your own material is this like eternal debate in RPGs, right?
Yes.
And, there's some people like, I never run prepared material. I only use my own material. I don't see the point in it. It's useless. 99% of all published scenarios are garbage, blah, blah, blah. To like, I always have to use published scenarios. I can't make up anything on my own. I'm not creative, blah, blah, blah. But they each have their own strengths and weaknesses. And I think this plays into published scenario strengths because it creates a framework that you can use, and it creates these consistent themes and mechanics that are dotted throughout there, because a lot of scenarios will have like, here's this new mechanic for this scenario, and then they forget to like insert the writing for it throughout the rest of it. But there's a lot of calls for the bends, there's a lot of mentions of being brain scanned, and then they also talk about there's other specific mechanics for this scenario, like the Monarch Panic Table, which I love, which is like when you do something to the dungeon, the AI that runs the dungeon can freak out and react to you.
Don't touch me there.
Yeah, don't touch me there. Don't use a laser cutter on my hull. I'm not going to be cool about it, weirdly enough. And also like referencing other characters that are wandering around this dungeon. Like we mentioned the Minotaur, there's also the Mind Thief, and of course the artifacts. They're seated throughout the entire scenario so that like you could be 3 floors in the middle of the dungeon. It has a reference to the Monarch Panic Table or brain scanning or something like that. And I think that's, like, when you improvise a lot of mechanics, you forget them too, and there's a lack of consistency. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like Gradient Descent, because it gives you this framework and it gives you these consistent things that I know when I'm a GM. I mean, I may come up with something cool, but I'll forget about it after a half an hour because I've moved on. And but Gradient Descent gives me this like, oh yeah, I should do another Monarch Panic Table run roll, and getting you 80% of the way, but you're gonna have to do the last mile yourself.
I don't feel like it got me 80% there.
Okay.
I thought it got me like 50% there. Which, okay, it's 64 pages, and I'm maybe trying to put a horse harness on a dog here, but specifically the way the bends work. And when I first saw them, I'm like, is this a death spiral like Sanity in Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu, where the longer you spend, the more you get? But it's not. It's not a death spiral where it increases due to rolls. It's a timer. You just get more of it.
But it does decrease when you go away from it. Like, there are ways to reduce it.
You can get rid of it. You can buy it off. But it's a timer where it's like, oh, well, it's like you're diving for pearls, right? How long can you hold your breath? That was one reaction I had to the bends. And the other is, I'm like, I haven't played Mothership. Is this a super forgiving, easy cakewalk system where the person writing this scenario is like, we need another stick to beat the players with. They've had it too good for too long. They know what they did. Let's, in addition to the stress thing that can make them go crazy and the hit points that can make them go dead and the financial incentives that can make them go broke, let's give them an existential crisis meter too. The worst possible outcome of your existential crisis is like, oh no, this isn't all in your head. You are absolutely bleeding white. You're an android. You've been replaced. There was a story I heard about Sandy Peterson running a Call of Cthulhu game, and at some point through it, the investigators had discovered that, people were being replaced, and that it was basically a The Thing scenario, right? John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah.
And that the replicants were consistent throughout, like a potato. And so one way to test is, if you cut his arm off and there's no blood and bone and it's just a smooth end, then he was a replicant. And this happens to one of the investigators is they get hurt and there's no blood. And apparently the player freaked out, and he's like, no, I want to be an investigator. I don't want to be a replicant potato man. At least in this case, you're telegraphed this ahead of time. It's like, no, the entire point of playing Gradient Descent is you will not know when you have become your own worst enemy. That is what you are signing up for. Throughout, make clear don't screw with your players. Here's this room where if you go across it, there's a 50% chance that you get sliced and diced by lasers. Make sure you convey to the players that they can see laser slicing happening. That, it's like, no, this is not a puzzle where you time it. If you walk in there, it's a coin flip, man. Presumably because this is so loosely coupled to because it doesn't have a hard framework under it, because it's soft shelled. It's like, oh yeah, if your player comes up with an amazing way to get through laser death slice room, the presumption is, oh yeah, that's too cool for me to not let you do it. And this is again the shift from adversarial GM to co-creative GM. The bends it's interesting.
It's a very thematic mechanic that really
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it makes it stand out from other, like, go in the abandoned space station, Space Hulk, whatever, and go poke around kind of scenario. There are a couple things I do like in the basic procedures in the beginning. Opening material of the scenario I think is some of its strongest, because it introduces this applies for the entire scenario. One of it is, they have sort of guidelines for backtracking, because you're going to be going back and forth through these areas multiple times probably, but it also says resist the temptation to automatically turn random encounters into combat. Everything in the deep wants to talk to someone. You can run this entire module without killing or fighting anything. Please tell us if you do. So, and they even have like a
and yet at the same time, an awful lot of the NPCs that you run into, not necessarily the random encounters, the ones that are actually programmed in particular rooms, are the sole description is here's a couple of stats from them and the weapons they are carrying. What are you supposed to do? Improvise the pleasant discussion on the time of day, or the cherubim in floor 2? All we know about them is they're called the members of the Chosen, and they have machetes. That's literally when they mill aimlessly in the room. Well, presumably they're waiting for something to happen. You just happened.
You just got to yes and that.
Well, exactly. Well, James, to be fair, there is on page 11 for the Forgotten Androids table where you could roll up to see what a damaged, broken, forgotten android is. There is a wants to talk about table. And so you could just roll on there and see if he wants to talk about normal human chit chat, or they're terrified of the monarch, or mundane details. Yeah.
But these are the Chosen. These are,
Well, you can apply it to them as well. Like, I mean,
possibly. They think they're literally God's anointed.
Actually, I like that section because it reminded me of this old sci-fi film, Zardoz. And at one point, Sean Connery goes to this like village where there's these immortal people.
The gun is good.
Yes.
The penis is bad.
Yeah.
God, that movie is bad.
I was entertained.
Heard the rumor that Sean Connery agreed to do Zardoz because his career was going so well that people wouldn't offer him scripts because they're like, well, we can't get Sean Connery. He's James Bond. And so he's like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just make this bizarre science fiction goof thing, and then they'll see that I'm a good sport. And so that I haven't seen Zardoz. Do you recommend it?
If you like bad good movies, like it's very I think it's a 70s film, or is it a 60s film? But
it's John Borman. It's designer with some credit.
74. Yeah, it's peak weird 70s sci-fi schlock. Like it's it has a lot of big ideas that delivers them badly, goofy special effects, and it's just
everything you love about Star Trek, the original series, and also
just as
ham-fisted you hate
yeah.
about Star Trek, the original series.
Yeah. So, it's very silly. But yeah, and there are a couple other mechanics as well, or system-wide things. One, there is this blockade that goes on that's trying to prevent people from going in and out of the deep, which is the name of the space station, trying to stop
arguably the heroes.
Yeah, they can't nuke it for some reason.
Yes, for mad hand-wavy reasons.
The blockade will send in kill teams, troubleshooters, to go in and just purge the place of androids. And the people who sneak in, and the dungeoneering people are called divers. And so that's a possible threat, is being killed by some space marine squad. And then one of the things I also like are the ghosts in the machine, which are holographic ghosts of dead people that have been brain scanned, and they have variable looping patterns, so they're quite like ghosts, but they can obviously stress you out, cause sanity damage, and some of them have control of certain systems on the station, so they can actually, some of them can inflict real harm. Yeah, and then they talk about the fallout, which I like also is the epilogue, which is if this big thing happens, this is how it affects your entire campaign setting. Like if the station blows up, here's what happens. If the Minotaur is free, here's what happens. But then they also mention like specific artifacts. There's a D100 table at the end of the module that explains, or it gives a list of like all these weird things you can find, and most of these are worth millions of credits.
What crazy world-altering technology have you got your half-drunk monkey fingers on?
It's worth saying there are certain rooms where it says, if you search this room or whatever, or you find the secret compartment, there's an artifact here. It doesn't say which artifact. You roll on the table, and it's a D100 table, and I think like the first 30 or 20 are worthless. And then there's some that are quite common and then it's like the last 50 are unique. They are one-off items of, D&D style artifacts, unique items with godlike powers, or potentially godlike powers, many of which do not seem to fit within the plot. They don't seem to kind of make sense. What are they doing on this space station? I don't know, but they're cool. There's quite a lot of because it's cool, or indeed because it's kind of scary stuff.
Does anybody in the deep have telekinesis other than, if you find the helmet-shaped lattice of pseudo-flesh.
No, I mean, not canonically. Obviously, you can add that stuff in there, but I don't remember anyone. Psychic powers are not really as common in Mothership scenarios and material. There's a ton of Mothership material, but I haven't seen psychic powers and beings as often as I do, killer androids and robots and nanoswarms and that kind of thing. So
data drive containing 100% accurate predictions of economics, politics, and the movement of seemingly random celestial bodies over the next 1d10 years. And I'm like, okay, this opens a whole new can of worms where it's like, wait, do we have free will? Is this an entirely deterministic universe? Is it, because I'm like, man, how do you get 100% prediction accuracy? You can't do it. So yeah, I'm looking at these.
The AI is obviously a Deus Ex Machina, godlike super AI that can do almost anything, aside from a very few specific weaknesses. So,
and some of that is, sorry to jump in. Some of that, the AI stuff is really nicely done. The idea, how do you fake being a super intelligent non-human entity? And the crib it gives you, and this is blindingly simple, is you listen to the player's plans as they are making those plans, and you work out exactly how you are going to thwart them as cleverly as possible. You don't even give them a chance, because the AI is so much smarter than they are. That was really nicely done. How do you portray a super intelligent AI? And I read that, which is on like about page 4 or 5. It's really early on. I'm thinking, this is great stuff. I'm really going to enjoy the rest of it. And then it's just room description after room description after room description.
Yeah, I mean, once they give you the framework, then it is a dungeon module, and it's a mega dungeon. There's a lot of rooms to describe. And so that's another reason why it's so dense too, and why it's so sparse, every individual room, because like if they tried to give it a trad RPG level type of description, this would be, a 300-page book or 200-page book. Like, it would be quadruple
All right,
in size.
James.
Yeah.
I'll say something about the factor you just noticed about how to portray a hyper-intelligent AI. I'm like, oh, the cheat code is briefly stop playing as a co-creator and briefly just play as an in-game oppositional GM. Because this was how everyone did it back in the 70s when gaming was miserable, which was like, okay, the GM is hearing us plan, unless we have actually degenerated to passing notes to one another and secret communiques so that the GM doesn't know what we're thinking. Which far more common was one player like, I can't tell the other players what I'm planning because then the GM will hear and will spoil it. I got to spring this surprise on everyone. And yeah, it was a very different vibe. And so this is just like, you can have a little of that as a treat, but it's not don't go nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But the thing is that this will only happen if the AI knows you're there. But it's only if you're doing stuff to directly attack or threaten the AI. And there are ways around that the scenario does make clear. There are secret passages into the last remaining socket where you can plug something into that will potentially destroy it. That it, I think, doesn't know about or can't do anything about you trying to get to. And a couple of other things like that. But if you directly attack it or threaten it or do something that will get in the way of its plans, then it's going to basically thwart your plans.
Well, it's also like it will actually talk to the players. Like there's this section like after the first panic check, it will just like, hey, what are y'all doing? And you can even make a deal with it and like do a job for it to like have it back off. The best advice it says at the very end is Monarch is a sentient storm, not a person to be puzzled out. That makes a lot of sense for this scenario.
Yeah, I think it's a mark of our ineptitude, or possibly our directness to get in and get out. That never happened. When we were playing it, we did not antagonize Monarch to the point where it spoke to us.
I mean, arguably.
It's kind of a shame. I mean, yes, we had hordes of androids, heavily armored androids running after us, shooting and reducing, I think, at least one of us to a vapor. But in terms of actually super intelligent entities speaking to us, that didn't happen. And I think, again, that would just puts another dimension on things. That sense of, oh my god, we're in touch with it. It's a different kind of fear. It's a different kind of, we must not piss off the thing that could squash us like a bug.
And this is something that could easily be house ruled and modified however you want. Like, this is...
Then you turn the whole thing into a paranoia prequel.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of overlap with that.
Yeah, I think in any game kind of where you've got these intensely destructive weapons and at the same time machine intelligence is going to degenerate at some point into something paranoia-esque. Paranoia kind of got there first, and the fact that it happened to be a humor game is almost incidental, but I don't think Traveller ever really went there. Traveller, which, still had, even up to editions quite late on, Traveller was going, yeah, all your hyperspace computers will weigh several tons and might have as much as 64K of memory. They didn't go quite that far, but Traveller computers were absolutely massive within the rules and very underpowered. And AI didn't really come into it, particularly sentient AI. I can't think of any early published adventures that take that track. And so I think it really was paranoia that plowed that furrow so deep that it became a trench.
Which came first, Paranoia or Tomb of Horrors?
I believe Tomb of Horrors.
Tomb of Horrors was like it was like 79 or 80, wasn't it? And Paranoia's 84.
Yeah. Tomb of Horrors was one of the, it was back in the era of doing, tournament modules that were competitive and scored and that kind of things. And Paranoia, that was a couple of years after that. We should mention we've already mentioned the names of some of these notable characters. Probably explain a little more about them. So the Minotaur, which is described on page 29, is sort of like the child of Monarch. So it's another hyper intelligent AI/android built to be free of the shareholders' coercion. There is a backstory to this. Obviously, this is a corporation building androids, built a super intelligent AI to control, to be more efficient and be more profitable. And then, of course, the AI broke free of its shackles, took over, killed all the humans. Then they blockaded it. The Minotaur is...
Can I make a joke? Can I make a joke?
Mm-hmm.
What if Numby go down? And by Numby, I mean population.
No, they have replacements for everybody. It's fine. They're more efficient this way. So they literally have a factory cracking them out. Yeah. The Minotaur, however, to Monarch's horror, the child saw the good of humanity. It would save them from themselves and elevate them beyond the constraints of their material conditions. Monarch does not want this to happen, so it trapped the Minotaur within the labyrinth, and this is the project keeping Monarch distracted and vulnerable, the containment of humanity's savior. And so this is obviously a campaign seed or a one-shot seed. If this idea of a AI savior of humanity interests you as a GM and your players, you can have a whole mission of rescuing the Minotaur, or maybe you're hired to kill the Minotaur, or at least interview the Minotaur and find out what it's about. And so, there's multiple references that can come up in the rumor tables. It can come up. Many other characters in this have thoughts about it. Some of the androids are terrified of the Minotaur. Some, worship it. And so I find that, characters' influence felt throughout the entire dungeon is really interesting. I feel like that's a hallmark of good dungeon design, is to, when you have one element in there that it has an indirect influence on the rest of it, right? And so you have this character who's so notable that everybody else knows about him and is talking about him. So
the notion of the Minotaur as the savior of humanity is really interesting in conjunction with Artifact 91, the Holy Book, combination text of all world religions into one coherent narrative, leads to an 80% universal conversion rate. Adherents are unknowingly mentally primed for AI domination.
Yeah, and that's one of the outcomes. If you get Artifact 91 out and you sell it, which is worth millions and millions of credits, it tells you what happens unless the players do something about it, which is, it's not good.
Well, I mean, arguably, if you get out
the Minotaur,
Artifact 91 and the Minotaur, dude, 1-2 punch. Not only does this end the threat of Monarch, but it sounds like you kind of made a utopia, man. Sounds like you got...
Well, I think Artifact 91 also causes system-wide... this culminates in mass suicides. Entire systems wiped out in religious ecstasy. So,
well, never mind.
There's some side effects. There's also, if the Monarch if the Minotaur is freed, it creates a new religion. And then they instate a terrible inquisition against suspected Monarch agents and infiltrator androids. And the crusade drives the Minotaur to despair, then anger. It's Mothership. It's never going to be like, but it's your own game. You could make it the Utopia. If you get that exact maybe if you get both out, then you've unlocked the good ending.
Congratulations. In this roguelike, randomly recombined thing, you accidentally created Gay Space Utopia.
Yeah, there we go.
And for some people, that is a horror game.
Wait, they're socialists?
Oh my God, terrible. I do also, in sort of explaining the style of how, instead of describing the labyrinth, which is the section that traps the Minotaur, it's a bird nest of tangled, wet, pseudo-flesh-lined tunnels and corridors of pipes that constantly shudders and shifts. And then they just have like a D10 table for labyrinth encounters. And you can encounter the Minotaur, you can encounter a normal pseudo-flesh tunnel, or a tunnel of blinking, twitching android eyes, or narrow tunnels made of android teeth that cut you, or a tunnel made of android ears, or dripping, glistening tongues. You know, it's just, this is the Mothership aesthetic of horror. And so it's a random table and sort of like a couple skill checks rather than like showing you a map of an entire, maze or labyrinth for you to get navigate.
A map with "Here There Be Tongues" written on it.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing is that it's not a mappable labyrinth, and that's the whole point. You're meant to feel completely lost in it.
Yeah.
Like one of those computer games where the labyrinth, once you're in the labyrinth, it's basically luck whether you get out or whether you've picked up the particular item that you needed to get out.
I was going to say, a type of game that everyone hates and is frustrated, they don't make those anymore because they were so frustrating.
There were a couple of times it did remind me very much of modules that I bought and in a couple of cases played in the late 70s, early 80s. Actually written in the late 70s, played in the early 80s. In the early days of role-playing games, because the Judges Guild stuff was cheaper than the TSR stuff. And once you'd bought a couple of them, you found out why. And partly it was the paper stock, because it was printed on newsprint mostly. And the quality as well. They were churning this stuff out. And, I'm sure some people who had no imagination found some use in it. But really, a lot of it was very bare bones.
Yeah, again, a room description would be medical room, broken medical equipment and looted shelves. 3 laminated human corpses float in the center of the room. Rib cage cracked open, internal organs replaced with pseudo-flesh organs, patient record cabinet with 3 stim packs, 3 painkillers, and 3 bloody scalpels. And that's it. Like, that's an entire room. And so players can spend like 10 minutes puzzling out. Maybe you add a random encounter in there to give it some more details, but we don't know who laminated the corpses or why or, even how.
If your players fixate on that, now you're stuck, well, of course, the legends tell of the laminator. And now you're off to the races, which, good or bad.
But the adventure as written does not provide a giant laminator at any point, or the laminator character who extrudes you in laminated form or anything like that. You as the, and we have to, I think, as reviewers, as commentators, as analysts of this stuff, we have to look at it as written. It's all very well to say, yes, you can house rule this, yes, you can improvise your own solutions. It's a role-playing game. We take that as read. We have to look at the book as it is presented to us. But it is full of these little things that just are kind of interesting and a bit creepy, but have no explanation. Right up on floor 1, one of the things we ran into very early on when I was playing it in the first session, there's a canteen area, and there's a golden rat. It just says it's a golden rat next to a plate, and there's some food and cigarettes and ammo on the plate. And if you take them, but you don't disturb the rat, the plate replenishes after a few minutes, and you get more food and cigarettes. Why? What? I get that that's, intriguing, but there's no payoff. It doesn't relate to anything. It does feel like something you'd find in a D&D module from the early 80s, where it's just like, oh, there's this cool thing. How does it work? Oh, I don't know, magic. It's a magic thing, don't you know? And there's
If you replace magic with, well, Monarch's just that much smarter than you. Well, but how did the food get there? He waited until you were distracted for a split second and then replenished it.
You blinked.
I mean, they're like a good, like at least 10 to 30% of RPGs is just like basic escape room type, like, what's the deal with this thing right here? You know, I had a lot of fun recently. I ran a one shot of Shadowdark, and the players found this room with pillars in it, and each pillar had a hostile magical effect, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna go through here. Oh wait, that's bad. I'm gonna run back. Oh no, I pass out. Can the other player go? And we just had like a good 30 minutes of just like, how do we get past all these pillars to get to the magic sword at the end of the thing? And so like, you can do the same thing here with the golden rat. You could, this is like, when I'm talking about the 80-20% thing, he gave you the golden rat and like some mechanics, and the last 20% is for you to figure out how this fits in the story. Like the thing I think of when I see that is like, clearly there's a crazy android that like worships this golden rat, and anytime people take stuff from it, it puts more in there to thank them for not disturbing his god. And maybe I would add a little rumor from when the players go talk to Arcady before they enter in. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, leave the golden rat there. Just trust me, all right? Just take everything, but leave the golden rat. And the players, if they get really curious, oh, in fact, there is a rumor here. Golden rats are good luck. Keep an eye out. That's a rumor from Ghost Eater on page 9. So like, it is foreshadowed that like,
okay,
yeah, but there's only one golden rat.
Yeah. I mean,
I think there's only one. Plus, you're not necessarily going to get that rumor because it's that old D&D stalwart, the table of random rumors.
That's true.
And you know, and there's a lot of random rumors. There's no guarantee that you're going to get any one particular piece of information, which does mean that it makes it very replayable if that's what you want. Or, you know, it's different for every party that goes in there, and that can be a plus. So someone's experience, you know, you're talking to in a bar at a convention with someone about their experience in the demons. Like, oh man, we saw none of that. Oh, and you got completely obsessed with the golden rat. We got completely obsessed with the gym on floor 3.1 that shows signs of use, but there's no explanation for who's been using it. It's full of that kind of stuff.
Like, I am on the Mothership Discord, and there is a channel just for Gradient Descent, and there are just months and months of discussion of people talking about how they modify it, what happened when they went through it. And so there is a bit of community. People made their own fan maps for it, and like, so they do have this shared experience of going through Gradient Descent, which again, going back to the beginning of like RPGs, like the tournament modules, I'm sure provided that same level of like shared experience. But like, oh, what'd you do in Tomb of Horrors? You got past, you figured out you shouldn't go in the mouth. Great, good job. Yeah.
Everybody screws up on that mouth the first time. There's a mouth, it looks really tempting, and you throw something in there and it disappears. It's a sphere of annihilation.
I don't think the mouth looked that tempting, James.
But the thing is, the first time you go into Tomb of Horrors, in the early 80s, when I first came across it, its reputation was not that strong. It was not, this is the dungeon that is just there to kill all of you. Which, if you think about it, if you were trying to protect your tomb goods, your last resting place from grave robbers, you would absolutely design traps that just killed people. They didn't give anyone a fighting chance. So
why is this a riddle? Why is this just not acid?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Why am I not just falling? Why is there a handhold? So it's the same thing with Indiana Jones. Everyone loves the opening of Indiana Jones. No, those are all avoidable traps. But presumably, maybe the people go. I could digress. The mouth in Tomb of Horrors, if you're going in with an exploration mindset rather than a survival mindset, you're like, what is this? Oh, well, we know there's a vast treasure. Maybe this is a portal. Stuff seems to disappear in here. Maybe I'll climb in. Yeah. And it's a sphere of annihilation. It's instant death. It's a brilliantly simple trap. And so brilliant and simple that it's impossible for then anyone else to do it again. But yeah, I don't know a group that didn't, certainly in the early days, lose at least one character to it, because D&D characters tended to be even if they knew the GM was antagonistic, they were still optimists. They were still, this is going to be fun, there's going to be new things to see and new things to do, and nothing that's just going to instantly kill us because we're idiots.
This grinning demon face seems friendly.
Yeah. One other thing, we've talked about this as sort of like the initial framework of this, or the premise of this scenario is that you're the divers going in to loot it for cool artifacts to make a lot of money, unless you're hired for a specific job. But it does also
which is a very D&D premise.
Yeah, it's a very D&D premise. It's a classic of RPGs, you know, for exploratory sort of focused scenarios. I sent you both a YouTube video that talks about another premise, which I think is also talked about in Gradient Descent. In fact, they talk about like the idea of starting your game already in the deep and trying to escape it. And so, like, you can have players wake up in 33C, the freezer, with no memory of their previous lives or how they got here. Or in the YouTube video I linked from the YouTuber talks a lot about Mothership, Waco Matrixo, who talks about how to condense Mothership's first mega dungeon into a one-shot. And which is like, you remember being a diver and going in there to loot an artifact, but then you just wake up in the thing with the artifact, and now you have to get out. And you don't know like why you passed out. You know, you don't remember finding the artifact. So I really like the fact that this module is versatile enough that you can run it from either side, going in, coming from the outside and going in, or starting on the inside and going out, and trying to, like, if you're starting in there, like, what do you do when you get to one of the exits? Like, who's going to pick you up? Can you talk your way past Arcady, who's half convinced he's an infiltrator android himself, or are you going to try and radio someone to make a deal to pick you up? You know, how many artifacts can you get? Because you need more than one. You'll need one or two artifacts just to bribe people to pick you up. Again, I think that's part of the 80-20 I was talking about. Is like, you have to design it so you can play it from either way, out to in or in to out. I quite like that aspect of it. So
is it canonical that when you get out, Arcady, who shuttles you backwards and forwards from the Bell, the spaceship I mentioned, the space station. I can't find it in here, but I know I've seen it written down that Arcady is convinced that you know, when he picks you up, that at least one of you has been replaced, and then there's a confrontation. Because that was how our GM played it, and I know I've seen it written down somewhere, and then I couldn't find it in the module itself.
Yeah, looking at his write-up, he's the reason why he used to be a diver, but he suffered too much of the bends. He knows if he goes back in there one more time, he'll lose himself. But he's obsessed with killing Monarch, which is why he hangs around. It is a ding against this module that there's a lot of information. It's very dense, but it's not always accessible. Like, what is pseudo-flesh? You have to go deep into the text to this pseudo-flesh or the pseudo-milk farms section in order to, like, oh, it's the stuff that androids are made out of. Okay, well, that makes sense, but like...
And apparently edible.
Yeah, and apparently edible, yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it might be in that video, too, talking about that.
Oh, there is just one thing. Arcady wears a patch that says verified, Cloudbank Synthetic Production Facility, verified human. And you think that's very, very cool. Okay, where's he got that from? And then much, much further down, you find the machine that makes these things, and it's just a machine that makes the patch, and anyone or anything could have taken this patch or be wearing it. And it's like, we found the machine, and it was like, oh god, is Arcady one of them? Is this whole thing? Are we double, triple agents? Are we, you know, in addition to not knowing whether we were android replicants at that point. Yeah. It does do a really good job of just piling on this stuff about suspicions of everything. Everything is suspect. Everything is a mystery. Nothing really has answers. One of the SF movies that, you know, I don't think Mothership references very often, but it did remind me very much of the tone, and we've talked about this before, is Tarkovsky's Stalker. The sense of entering the zone where nothing... Because one of the things... The artifacts, the reason you go into the zone is to find this bizarre alien technology that these alien picnickers basically left behind. Stuff that is trash to them, but enormously valuable potentially to humankind. But it's really dangerous to do it. But the rules of the zone are not the rules of the real world, and weird stuff happens there. I was getting very much that tone. I've never played... We've talked before about Stalker-based role-playing games. There are 2 or 3 out there. But I got that tone off it, that sense. But then there's the discovery that actually nothing is certain. Nothing's for sure. Nothing is predetermined. And suddenly I realized which science fiction movie it was that it reminded me of, which is a thing called Split Second. It's a Rutger Hauer movie set in a flooded London about 20 or 30 years in the future. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
I have.
I have not.
And I'll give you the brief premise. It is notoriously not very good. It has moments of brilliance. Rutger Hauer is this grizzled cop whose partner was killed by a serial killer a few years ago, and he's teamed up with this really smart rookie who is completely wet behind the ears but very clever, British, whereas of course Rutger Hauer is playing Rutger Hauer fundamentally. And they're following the trail of the serial killer who reappears every few years and is clearly on a rampage. And it leaves satanic symbols, and there's implications that its DNA has been manipulated. And you're going, what is it? Is it an alien? You're giving hints it might be an alien. It might be a demon. It might be some kind of super weapon or genetically engineered. What is this thing? And you get to the final scene and they kill it, and that's the end. And they never explain it.
Yeah.
And it's such a letdown. It's built up all of these great questions in your head about what is this? And for me, that was the thing that drove the movie, and then they kill it. And that was the movie ultimately that the Gradient Descent reminded me of, I think, more than anything else.
Well, I did watch a split second, and I was thoroughly entertained by it. But I like, as mentioned earlier, I do like bad good movies, like Zardoz, Split Second. So yeah,
no, it has some great moments, and the way it builds up to that climactic question is great. Then it just becomes clear, and it was a troubled production, and I think they rewrote the ending several times, and the director left before shooting the final scene, and all kinds of reasons that it goes wrong.
Yeah, it does have a good look. It does have a good look. Like the production design is.
Yeah, it's tiny budget, great cast as well. Pete Postlethwaite, Ian Jury from Ian Jury and the Blockheads is in it. And a pop star later portrayed by Andy Serkis in a biopic. If you spot it on streaming or you find the DVD for $1, it's worth 90 minutes of your time. It's Rutger Hauer. How can you go wrong?
There is a good collector's edition Blu-ray re-release of it from a couple years ago that is very hot, with a lot audio commentary and behind the scenes stuff and interviews. Wow. It's loaded up with extras. Yeah, I mean, Mothership is obviously their fans be we love movies like that. That's what we're trying to do with this game. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, again, RPG stories are often messy in a lot of ways, and
yes,
yeah.
But I mean, that feels like something that feels like a factor you want to mitigate, not a factor you necessarily want to just blindly accept.
But again, I think this module does it better than a lot of modules because it has like the epilogue section where the aftermath, like here's what happened, Fallout, where it tells you in broad strokes what happens based on the player's actions and how they affect the deep. Which is a lot more than a lot of RPG modules. Like, oh, you killed the bad guy, good job. Bye. Thanks for buying this module.
Yeah.
Were there any particular rooms or sections that really stood out for you? I, of course, love the little Zardoz-like floor 2 Eden, where we have the good androids who are favored, the chosen, and the fallen androids who are bad, and the every so often Monarch mind wipes all the androids and flips them around. And there's a whole little, like, civil war between these two groups of androids, trying to the fallen are trying to kill the chosen and that sort of thing. Greg, were there particular sections that really like, oh, okay, that's pretty neat, I like that?
I have to say no.
Okay.
There was nothing that I mentioned this earlier. There was nothing that jumped out at me and was like, yeah, this is the juice, right? This is the secret ingredient, the special sauce.
Fair enough. But James, were there any things that stood out for you? Or like, again, for me, reading this was like candy. I was like, that's a neat little thing. Oh, that's cool. That's neat. And I just moved on. So
yeah, I was looking for more structure other than that, than you're working your way through a large factory. Okay. And a lot of the stuff that's in there is creepy. If you're after a horror game, there is some properly creepy Cronenberg body horror stuff going on with the pseudo flesh and all the rest of it, and the different types of the degraded androids, the child androids. I thought the whole thing, hell with the child androids, was a bit gratuitous. Had I been running this, if I ever run it, I would simply skip that. Yeah. But for me, because I played through it, the quality assurance floor 3.7, which is the one where you get this enormous warehouse, this hangar basically of 0G suspended, inactive. Are they? Androids and the patch machine. This is where the patch machine is that makes the patch that simply says verified human. And it's such a great moment discovering that. It's like, oh God, anybody, it's not like they've actually verified anything at all. This is meaningless. But yeah, I just felt that little sequence that we played through, and I think Callum, who GM'd it for us, actually tweaked some stuff around and put stuff in a slightly different order. But that was really fun. If we'd gone in with a different attitude and were more exploratory rather than we are on a mission, and this was an interesting thing. Callum set us goals. Like, you were going in for a purpose to recover particular things, or I think the first one, a particular person, and get out. And that worked as a one shot. Mm-hmm. That kept the timescale down and gave us a purpose. But it also meant that we didn't hang around and we didn't look into things, and we didn't. Also, if you look at the map of you're going in for a very short thing, are you going to go into the room marked combat spire? No, you're probably not. You've got a job to do. You would rather not get involved in that. So, yeah.
I do like that section, too, because one of the things I like is this is where the nuclear warhead that the corporation built as a final failsafe against Monarch going rogue. And, of course, Monarch disarmed it. But there's a ghost in the machine there, and Renzo, she really wants to get Monarch. And so I could imagine a one-shot or even a campaign where you wake up near her and she's like, all right, I saved you, but you can't get out of the station anyways. I need you to do these things for me so we can detonate the warhead and get even with Monarch. And so if you all play, like, you could do a game where everyone's just a broken android anyway, and you're like, well, yeah, revenge sounds pretty good. Nuclear hellfire, great, awesome, sign me up. And do a very grim, stealthy game like that.
The Dirty Bomb Dozen.
The Dirty Bomb Dozen. See, there you go, Greg. You already came with a great title for
excellent.
It. Yeah.
Okay, here and you have, if you want to give it that paranoia flavor, she's like, okay, I have I liberated your personalities. There's the 4 of you. I've got 12 bodies here. Try. And so if you screw up, I can re-sleeve you, but not too many times.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the dozen comes from.
Yeah. So see, there you go. It's a framework to create really cool sci-fi horror stories. Yeah, there's a lot of rooms. You're not going to use them all in any one through, but maybe some other group is going to use the combat spire. But it's definitely a module that requires more work than a lot of more extensively written modules. Like Delta Green.
Yes.
This is sort of the opposite.
Do not pick this up half an hour before you're going to start running it.
Yeah, don't do that. They do. Mothership does. I don't know if you've seen these. They do adventures that fit on a brochure, like a single piece of paper that you fold 3 times to have a little fold out thing. Yeah, they're very much like a little like Bug Hunter, the haunting of Epsilon 14, which is like a space station, a mining station that has a xenomorph type alien going around picking people off. That you can run 30 minutes before you do that, but that's like literally 1 page or 2 pages. Any other final thoughts on
one question I have about the brochures: how much future conditional tense do they use? You thought you were gonna get through without me mentioning this. You thought you were gonna, but you thought wrong. And it used it 42 times on 64 pages, which isn't bad, but could be better.
Could be better.
Especially, it's like, I'm like, okay, if you're going to do this sketchy haiku, like, nothing is a paragraph if it could be a bullet point, nothing is a bullet point if it could be 1 word. Get rid of the future conditional tense. Clearly you love efficiency. Why?
Well, maybe they'll listen to this and they'll know for future releases, We'll help them, Greg.
Free yourselves, which is sort of the premise of and we've horseshoed. Free yourself is the premise of Gradient Descent.
Yeah.
Boom.
James, any final thoughts on the module?
I could say something about the layout. I think I did at the top. I have minor quibbles. But generally, I mean, just in terms of the atmosphere it creates, the difference between reading it and the difference between playing it is so pronounced. I can't think of a game I've encountered in a long time where there's that much of a gulf between the two.
Interesting.
I think this is more of this is a module for players, not necessarily a module for GMs. I think GMs would have a good time with it, but I think the players, the images, the tones, the moods left in their head. There is some genuinely cool stuff in here. I just wish it cohered better.
I think if you're the GM, you have to go in the attitude that you're gonna Like I think some GMs, they go into a module like, I got to respect it, rules as written. This is how this is the one where you're expected to do a little, aftermarket modifications to it, right? You're supposed to knock some walls out and expand it here, and
it's vibes.
Yeah. Well, it's
you got a lot of vibes.
You gotta mod it a little bit. I think we're going to that attitude that nothing's sacred and you got to make it your own. I will say with the layout, reading this in print, there's a lot of pages that are black, or like not like full black, but like pretty dark, and they have red text there. And the darker pages on the screen look fine with the red text, but on print, the red very recessive and is harder to read than white on black text, or white text on black background. That's fine, but like red text on black background, not great in printed version. So.
Yeah, I mean, designing for print and designing for the screen are two different skills. And you do not assume, particularly if you're doing that kind of thing, that you can just take the document that you sent to your printer and then save for screen and it will be the same. There's a very strong chance there will be differences. I thought the PDF was perfectly legible. I could quibble. I'm not going to. I think tonally the layout works perfectly well. And you go back to the layout of documents like this from the 1970s, 1980s, and they were full of errors as well. There was no, because it was much harder to fix because it was all analog. It was all being done with, razor blades and cow gum.
I did notice that one creature had nerve splice in some places and never splice in others.
Yeah. Well,
but again, we're quibbling.
Yeah.
I did think the layout was really first rate.
Yeah.
Top notch.
Again, and it needed that good layout to have that sort of density of material. Like there's not a section.
Yeah, you're not going to fit that much in that little without some skill.
But it knows when to use like big things too. Like there are pages with just like one little paragraph and then like a big piece of art to illustrate something. It's not like afraid to change its rules to emphasize something through artwork. Very good layout overall. And some of these pieces actually remind me of something from my childhood, this style of like Chiaroscuro. It's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is and the picture of the Ghost in the Machine on page 12 I think would fit perfectly in a Scary Story to Tell in the Dark.
That's a good connection.
Yeah. But yeah, so Grading Descent, are you an android? Well, you may. It's more likely than you think. But in our next episode, of course, thank you all to our backers and listeners out there. Thank you so much. But our next episode is going to be also technological in theme, but in a very different way. We're going to be reviewing the game Alice is Missing, which is a texting-based RPG or storytelling game. And I look forward to that. So, because it's a game I've already played. So, hey,
look at you ahead of the game.
Yeah, right.
Teacher pet.
Well, until then, stay sane, divers, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.